In Humanism and Its Aspirations, humanists explain that the joining of individuality and interdependence enriches our lives, encourages us to enrich the lives of others, and inspires hope of attaining peace, justice, and opportunity for all. Mentoring programs pair an adult and child or teens who would benefit from an additional role model in their lives. It is an opportunity to put humanist values into practice and to help a young person during a crucial stage of life. Today, Rita Messer, Jeff Dubin, and Jamie Nichols will talk about their personal experiences as mentors and about some of mentoring's benefits to both the mentor and the mentee. And we will also have Sharon Rigsby, AVP of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Central Ohio, to speak about the programs and the services that they offer. Let's give a warm welcome to our panelists.
I was going to start off with some basic introductions and definition type stuff, but thank you all for being here. Now, by show of hands, how many of you, when you think about your time growing up, had a strong personal role model that you consider to be a positive influence on your life? Okay, now I'm going to continue to add additional things to this, so then put your hands down as those come, so hands. How many of them were people that were not related to you? How many were people that you considered weren't just positive role models, but actually would take the time to listen to you and take you seriously, even as a young person? Now, this is actually higher than I expected, but we're a spectacular group. A lot of people do not have that. Sorry, a lot of people don't have that in their lives. When you talk to, I've worked not just through mentoring, but through other organizations. Worked a lot with teenagers and with people in elementary school, and a lot of them usually think of adults as kind of kind of these separate people from them that aren't really part of, that are the people that tell them what to do, who to be, what to think, are more concerned with what they want that young person to be molded into rather than who they are now, and helping them figure the things out on their own. There's more of that paternal thing. And growing up, I don't think I really had a lot of that. I mean, I had a very small number of positive role models. Actually, a fair number of them were fictional. People that embodied qualities, which is a great way of feeling inspired, but not really much for conversation if you have questions. And to me, that's what mentoring represents: is somebody who has taken the time to hang out with, sit down with a young person who's growing and still figuring out who they want to be, what they want to do with their lives, or just what their values are, all these different things, and doesn't have an agenda. They're not there. A mentor is not there to tell them you need to be this type of person or have this kind of job, or constantly asking the question, what do you want to do when you grow up? Instead, the focus is, well, who do you want to be right now? And let them answer that question. And I think that's very important to have that, and also just to have somebody that's willing to listen to you. Because a lot of kids growing up, at least my personal experience, is that there wasn't a lot of people in my life that could sit there and just listen to you seriously, especially as an elementary or middle school kid, without going, well, that's just silly, or you're just a kid, or let me tell you how it really is, or when I was your age. Those kind of things. And so not everyone has those kind of role models in their life, and that's what mentoring provides. But there's also a lot of benefits. And I see a lot of those benefits as being both for the mentor and the mentee. For example, it gives you a chance for both of you to expand your worldview. You get paired with a mentee for almost any of the organizations I've known about. The person that you're being matched with is not going to have a carbon copy of your background. And one thing that I've noticed, whether you're in elementary school or high school, whatever, or even in your adult life, people tend to live in bubbles. You have your social circles, your cliques, your communities, that you tend to socialize and circulate predominantly in. And there's a lot of commonalities, and that's a comfortable thing. But sometimes there's a benefit to stepping outside of that zone, to getting to know people with completely different backgrounds, completely different experiences, and sharing between yourselves, what that was like, and learning from each other. So not only does the mentee learn from you, you learn from them. You get to expand your worldview, you're outside of your comfort zone, and they're getting to meet somebody also outside of their social circles. And as I mentioned it before, the big one to me is having someone to listen to you. I don't, as I said, growing up, didn't have a whole lot of that, and that was something that I kind of made a point as an adult to try to improve on myself, was to be available to my friends, to be willing to listen, and even if no advice, and to withhold advice unless it's asked for. To talk about experiences rather than, well, I think that's really a dumb idea, you should do this. Not always the best way of going about it. When, and some of the challenges to that as a secular person, and this is specifically for our group, I feel it is useful to be a secular role model, to be someone who isn't trying to, if you're paired with someone who is religious or has a religious family, it is not a mentor's position to say, well, that's silly and you shouldn't do that. It's just to present yourself, I'm a secular person, I am ethical, I'm a good person, and you're getting to know me. Just providing that example can be very important for some people that may not have had that otherwise. But also, instead of saying, well, you're wrong or you're silly, just asking questions in terms of, well, I've had a few littles over the years, and sometimes they say things, well, this weekend I'm going to do insert some crazy thing here. And, in part of the training, which, Sharon may mention later, is there is a line where you're like, okay, that's nice, and when you're done talking to them, go talk to your coordinator, because intervention may be required. However, in a lot of cases, it's, something that's relatively stupid, but not necessarily immoral or illegal. And so, there the opportunity is just to ask them to think it through. Why do you want to do this? Or why do you feel this way? So instead of judgment, you're just asking them to use their own tools to kind of work through the process. Because in some cases they may go, wow, that was kind of a bad idea. Or at the very least, okay, I'm going to jump off a building, at least I'm working on it. That's not an example. That's completely hypothetical. But the idea of, being there as a sounding board, to talk through someone's ideas, to talk through someone's, impressions of things. That was a common topic for me with littles, was to talk about current events. Even ones that they may not feel passionately about, to go, well, what do you think about that? When you hear that so-and-so did this, or this happened in this other country, just to kind of, give them a chance to experience these worldviews and to think about these events. And even if it's not something important to them, just to have that conversation. And when I mentioned coordinator training, that's another useful thing, is there are do's and don'ts for being a mentor, being a good mentor. And while there aren't a whole bunch of you must do this, do this, do this, there's a lot of useful guidelines in being a good mentor to somebody, some of which I mentioned, like not having an agenda. And when you think about other communities where people, well, for example, church communities where people are born into them, they grow up in them, when you talk to some of those people, they may have role models in that community. And as a secular group where we don't really have a strong child contingent, the parents we have in our community come for specific events and they go. It's not quite that close-knit. They don't really get that kind of mentoring experience from within their own community. And I think that's something that could be better. But I think it's also useful for us to have that experience, even if not mentoring within our own community, but to just have that experience working with younger people, because it gives you the opportunity to not just learn from others, but also to learn about yourself. And I'm going to, what we're doing at this point, is, initial definitions, and then I'm going to turn it over to Rita to talk about her own experiences as well as any additional values, challenges, and benefits that she encountered. Then Jeff, and then we'll turn it over to Sharon.
I volunteered with Big Brothers Big Sisters back when I lived in New Mexico. I was paired with, when I started, a 14-year-old girl, and we continued to spend time together even past the time that she turned 18. So she had officially graduated from the program, but while I was still in the same city and state, we continued to have a friendship and spend time together. And it was very much an enriching experience. There were some times that I would take her and her younger brother to do activities as well, because there's often a shortage of male mentors. And so that was nice to be able to provide that experience as well. We would spend more time than was, I guess you could say, required. They asked for a certain commitment of time, but we spent more than that. I think we got together probably every week for a couple of hours at least at a time, which was beyond what was expected. And we would go do all kinds of fun things. We would go see movies, we would go bowling, we would do craft things together and just kind of experiment with trying out new things. So that was really fun, and that was one of the things that I remember my little talking about, like, oh, this is so much fun that, like, you like to try out new things and we can experience different stuff. And she had a good attitude of curiosity. Her family was not very strict or fundamentalist, but they were Muslim, and I got to learn about how that impacted their family and their culture specifically. I'm trying to think what else. At one point, she had gotten kind of mixed up with some friends that were not making very good decisions, and they were out one evening and ended up getting into some legal trouble, and because she was present at the time, she also ended up having some charges. So when she had her juvenile court, I was able to be there to support her and her family. I was already practicing social work at the time, and my focus area was with families of delinquent adolescents. So I had a fair bit of knowledge about how the court system worked in our community, and so I felt very, very fortunate to be able to be present and share her strengths and the fact that we were meeting, and I think that actually helped the magistrate to make an appropriate determination about what to do regarding her charges. I think they ended up being dropped. She might have had to do some community service, but one of the really important things about mentoring and working with youth who are involved in delinquent behaviors is that the more positive adult supports they have in their lives, the less likely they are to be engaged in problematic behaviors. So that's one thing that I think is still a very strong reason for mentoring, in whatever shape it might take. I don't have the time now to do regular mentoring through, say, Big Brothers Big Sisters, because of all of the many things that I've chosen to be involved with. But one of the ways that I've been spending time in a similar kind of role is with Camp Quest, which many of you have probably heard of. It's a summer camp for children of free-thinking families. So they're not required to be atheist or agnostic, though most of them are. And so I volunteer during the summers with Camp Quest, which is actually housed in this building. And that's a really fascinating, fun, amazing way to give of time and energy, or even financially, for kids to experience all of the benefits of, well, probably not all of the benefits, but many of the benefits of mentoring in a shorter period of time. That there's a focus on critical thinking exploration and learning about science and humanist philosophy, which is super exciting. And I'm pretty excited about this year because Ohio has 2 weeks of camp this year instead of just one, and it's the 20th camp season. So afterward, if any of you are interested in learning more about that or interested in being involved in some way, let me know. I'd be happy to talk more about that.
I'm going to kind of avoid digging into personal details because while I'm somewhat of an open book about myself, I am currently doing Big Brothers, and it's possible people here might be my little brother someday. So I'm going to reveal about myself, but then not too much about him. So I don't have any kids, and never particularly wanted to have kids, and still don't plan to have kids. And I probably had, coming into adulthood, I also didn't have any siblings. So coming into adulthood, I probably had a lot less experience watching kids, being around kids, etc., than a lot of other people. So I had mixed feelings for a long time about being around kids at all. A little bit of volunteering, not necessarily especially positive experiences. I heard about Big Brothers, Big Sisters through my mom, actually. She had a little sister for a number of years. And, enjoyed it, and the kid enjoyed it, and that just got me thinking about it for a long time. So I got involved in this all the way back a good 8.5 years ago now. And my second little brother, which is the one that I'm with now, was 7 when we met. And really had no experience other than like babysitting when I was young, looking after a 7-year-old kid. So I remember after we went to the Big Brother's office and met, they had him go ahead and get in my car, and I was going to go ahead and drive separately from the mom and give him a ride home and have a little time to talk. And so I'm driving, I'm really paranoid, looking around, being like, stop tailgating me, don't drive too close to my car, this whole level of protectiveness, which I had never experienced toward myself. It was just this little guy in the car, I've got to... Of course, I've loosened up now about that, but, it was just... Yeah, in a good way. I'm not flooring it or anything, but I was just if you've seen the stickers that say "baby on board," I think people who put that aren't necessarily just trying to be cute. They're like, "Don't tailgate me. There's a kid in my car." It just gave me this kind of feeling, which is different from what I'm used to. I could go on forever about things we've done together. The basic structure is see each other every twice a month. Sharon and I were talking about earlier, that even that's not set in stone, so let's say it can be more than that, like Rita was discussing, but then if you miss some time, but then you do one long day, that's okay. There's a lot of flexibility, but basically twice a month. And just do things that preferably you like doing and the kid likes doing. So a few especially enjoyable things I want to mention. Just going from 7 to 13, there's so much learning that happens. And you have a chance to just kind of reinforce that learning. So it was great when he was maybe 9, 10 years old, and we're talking about gardening and plants. And I said, so why do you think plants need sun? Because we're both interested in gardening. And he said, well, blah, blah, photosynthesis. So a 9-year-old, what does a 9-year-old know about photosynthesis? So he starts talking about, the energy from the sun comes down, and the chlorophyll in the leaves, turns the energy from the sun into blah, blah. I'm like, wow. I didn't say this out loud, but I was thinking, you've gone much further than I thought you had. So just seeing that kind of curiosity is really fun, and just having a chance to reinforce that. And be like, okay, let's look out in the garden and see what's a good place for us to put plants. Speaking of which, I got into growing vegetables a good, 4 or 5 years ago? And a while back, so it was this method, square foot gardening, where you build a raised bed. So I am not a carpenter by any stretch of the imagination, and so I go and get some stuff, and then I asked my little brother to help. He was very excited about this, And we had the wrong size screws or the wrong size drill bits, maybe both, so we had to run back to the hardware store and we do that. And then I told them we would go do something. Like, I think I told them after we do this, we're going to go to the library. And so at some point, we were partway through, and I said, hey, I can do the rest by myself if you want. We can go to the library like I told you. He's like, no, I want to finish this. And for being a kid who has attention issues, it was great to just find something where it's like he was totally on it. If I said, hand me this thing, he handed me this thing. If I said, hold this thing and don't move, he would hold it and not move. So you just see how there's the motivation piece, and how, like, if you think a kid has problems in some areas, you spend enough time and you find out what they're good at, which in his case was like something hands-on, which is interesting, he's never been done before. So he was actually not just, oh, it's so cute, you're helping me. Like, he was genuinely helpful. A similar note, took him once to the Air Force Museum in Dayton. I recommend this to anyone with or without kids. It's free, it's huge, it's got all kinds of planes and helicopters. And having been a little late when it comes to developing the reading skills, he was excited enough to be there that he was like standing in front of these plaques and just making himself read out loud. And of course, like having to have a lot of help, because it's like he can't handle words like Messerschmitt, or Zeppelin or something. Yeah, there's lots of words that he could not. Some of them even I couldn't pronounce. But the point being, like, seeing that motivation and seeing him like focus in, and just try, and just having a chance to provide that opportunity. We've talked about environmentalism. And that's actually something that even when he was 7, we were driving and I saw like some litter by the side of the road. And I remember him saying something like, I'm never going to litter because if you litter, you'll destroy the earth. That was cool to hear. And just like the fact that even though he could be impatient and impulsive, doesn't always have the great social graces, he does actually say thank you. So if I give him something or if we do something, he says thank you. It still feels pretty good. With regard to religion and lack thereof, when I went to my interview for Big Brothers Big Sisters, I put up on the table, I'm an atheist. I said, it might be a good idea to mention this to the kid's parent, and just so if they have a problem with it, they know up front rather than being shocked and finding out later. It hasn't been a problem with regard to my first big brother or with him. We have not talked about religion. It's not especially interesting to him. He'd much rather go fishing or dig in the garden or do all the different things he likes to do. If he did ask, I would tell him. But it just hasn't been a topic of conversation. Mom hasn't really asked. But it's not, like I said, it's not something that would be deep, dark secret. I don't think anyone would be horrified or shocked, but it's just not of interest to him. So it's not something we talk about. I would encourage anyone who is considering, whether female or male, but especially male because of that waiting list that's been mentioned already, anyone that's considering this to look into doing it. It really, it's taught me a lot, like Jamie was mentioning, and even though I don't always know how it happened, I've seen significant improvements with regard to his interests and capabilities. And I just think it always gives us something to look forward to. And being, like I said earlier, someone that does not have any kids and does not intend to, I just feel like it's a way I can have some sort of influence on, some kid that may be around even after I'm gone. So.
Actually, I forgot I was going to mention my experiences quick.
Yeah.
Mine is a little bit different. I had been involved with the community program as well, but I actually started out in something called Project Mentor. It was, at the time, a pilot program. It was, I think, like 2006, 2005. Yeah. And at the time, I forgot the name of the elementary school, but part of it, there was high school that was involved in the Project Mentor one-on-one, and middle school. But there was also an elementary school where we would head over there during our lunchtime where I worked and be reading buddies and math tutors for the kids in elementary school. And at the time, there was a science teacher, general 5th grader, but for the science class, there was an interest in having someone get involved with that. And for those of you who know me, I'm a bit of a science enthusiast. So I volunteered for that. We really didn't have any direction as to what this was going to be. And it was me with a classroom, so I couldn't really do the one-on-one things. And I came up with the idea of kind of doing science demonstrations in front of the class. So like once, twice a month, depending on what chapters they were on in their science book, I would plan some form of demonstration to kind of tie into that and then open up for questions, especially things that would make them curious, that the effect or how this worked wasn't immediately evident, so that we could kind of get a conversation going. And that was a lot of fun. The following year, though, I switched over to the Project Mentor one-on-one stuff, which was 8th grade at the time, and had met the person that I moved into the community program with, and was with him for about a year in the school-based program. Let me back up. Is instead of what we're talking about here, where you're seeing the your little outside of school and one-on-one, it is school-based only. You would once every week or every couple of weeks. I don't remember the exact timing, but there are a number of companies here in town that support you taking your lunch hour. As a matter of fact, I work for Nationwide, and they bust us all over there. That would go over to a school, meet with a student for an hour, just to talk, hang out. If conversation doesn't immediately come, the person kind of managing the efforts there will provide a number of activities, icebreakers, things to kind of get things going. My little and I ignored most of those because we were talking fine. But it's a nice thing to have for people that find that more difficult. And after he got out of 8th grade, he moved on to a charter school, so I could not, they were not participating in Project Mentor, so I actually took that to the community program. He's turning 21 in April, and we still see each other at least once a month. Actually, I still hear from his mom periodically. I have met a large portion of his extended family. When he graduated from high school, I was invited to the graduation party. I think in terms of family dynamics, I'm kind of that odd eccentric uncle sort of thing. I'm family, but I'm not quite family, but we like you. But I do hear a lot of information. I do hear used to get a lot of feedback from his mom. He was being raised by a single parent at the time. A lot of great beneficial stuff. Sometimes she would actually come to me and use me as a sounding board for things that she was dealing with and questions. Like, well, has he ever talked to you about X? Or could you talk to him about this thing? Or I'm going to try something different in issues I'm having with him. What do you think about that? And, in this case, I was kind of, I wasn't mentoring her by any shape. But it was nice to have someone else that knew her son that could, kind of be a bit of a sounding board and, in some cases, back her up a little bit if there were things going on in the home as a neutral party. But after that 8th grade, I also did Project Mentor for the following year and was mentoring another little in school. And I found that to be very rewarding and very interesting. And the classroom and the two young men that I had worked with were all very, very different experiences, very different people. The one commonality amongst all of them, though, is you'll be surprised on how quickly a young person will call you on your crap. This filter hasn't quite set in. And actually, I think that's a beneficial thing, just to have a little extra bit of challenge. And one of the things that made me think about talking about this to this group, Rita had given a talk at Skeptic Camp, 2009, I think. But it was the last Skeptic Camp we had with Corey, and about destigmatizing mental health and perceptions of mental health. And my little was actually helping me run the camera while I was taking a break and video recording my daughter's dance recital. So he was involved. He was there for this. And one of the things she had mentioned is if you want to destigmatize this, have kids and raise them with those values. And I'm here with my mentee, and I'm like, well, you can do that with this too. And there's all sorts of, positive ways of looking at the world and kind of tearing down some of the stigmas that are associated with various things that are generally unwarranted. That, even if you decide not to have kids, being a mentor gives you that opportunity to help someone have a broader worldview. And I think that's one of, aside from the secular part of it, because as has been mentioned in the news recently, a lot of people have fairly negative perspectives on people that don't have religion. And every once in a while you'll have an example, just like with all other worldviews, of someone who behaved very badly that happens to claim that as their worldview. And being out and being present and ethical is a way of helping to tear down that stigma. And I think at this point I will turn it over to Sharon Rigsbee, who is the AVP of Community Outreach.
I got a nice, warm, fuzzy feeling, and I'm not even sure what else I can say after that, because you guys did such a wonderful job, so thank you for making what I'm going to say so much easier. Again, my name is Sharon Rigsbee. I am the Assistant Vice President of Community Outreach and Volunteer Recruitment for Big Brothers Big Sisters. I absolutely love what I do, and the three of them just helped kind of make sure I understand why I love that so much. I was sharing with Jeff, I've been a mentor now for the last 7 years, and I've been a mentor in the program longer than I've been working for the agency. And I always say that because folks will take my kind of high energy personality and think I'm trying to sell them on mentoring and doing that in our program, and that's not the case. I have just been very fortunate and feel incredibly privileged to be able to, in a small way, impact the lives of some kids in our community. And so I'm very fortunate to be able to stand here with you guys and share a little bit. So I will flip through, kind of already went through that there. I just put a few slides together for you guys to be able to see. I'll just kind of give you some kind of high-level overview because Rita, Jeff, and Jamie did a great job of the warm, fuzzy part. They don't know it yet, but they're going on tour with me for recruitment season here this summer. So if you don't see them at your meetings each month, you know they're with me. Don't worry, I'll take good care of them. But I'm definitely want to take them with me when I go on recruitment tours this summer for sure. But Big Brothers Big Sisters is one of the largest Big Brothers Big Sisters agencies out of about 340 throughout the entire U.S. So I heard you were at the Big Brothers Big Sisters of New Mexico. Like, that just made my heart all happy because we're all over. And it's just really great that we're in those spaces, being one of the premier youth mentoring organizations to be all over the U.S., helping to provide support for kids. So I'm excited about that for sure. We actually are essentially a kind of sister of agencies. We serve about 14 Ohio counties. And so if you look at kind of Franklin County, we have a couple county offices as well as some subsidiary agencies who've joined our Central Ohio agency. Gives us the reach to be able to serve 14 Ohio counties. Now, Jamie mentioned about our Project Mentor program. We are incredibly fortunate here in Central Ohio, and I can't not mention this, because we just have the support of a number of organizations, companies, faith-based organizations, service organizations, and just organizations like yourself who support the work that we do, providing that time, talent, or treasure. And so I think here in Central Ohio, for us to be as kind of a small office as we are, but to be able to have the reach that we do, I'm always fortunate and very thankful to have such a strong support here locally in our community for our program and our brand. You'll see on the screen, if you kind of combine our school-based program and our community-based program, we serve about 2,500 kids, and that's kind of collectively looking at all of our agencies together. And I think about the size of our agencies. We're not a nationwide size. We're not a Cardinal Health kind of size of employees. We are a mighty few. And we've got some great folks back at our offices who are doing some great work to support some matches like what you've heard from Jeff and Jamie and Rita. I will kind of break it down for you. You see what I got here? Yes. So essentially, looking at our model, we essentially have 3 core competencies, if you will. I'll first start with our camp. We have a camp. A lot of folks do not know. So Rita, I saw your eyes kind of get excited, so I had to make sure I got that in there. So glad I did. We have a camp. It's called Camp Odeokwa. It is in the Hocking Hills area, right? You've been there, right on, my friend. So who knows where Old Man's Cave is? Right, everybody in the room. Our camp is 5 minutes from Old Man's Cave. Think about how beautiful the Hocking Hills area is. I mean, seriously, I love going there to see the kids, but then just to explore myself too. But we have a camp. We are the only Big Brothers Big Sisters agency who owns and operates our own 365, 24/7 camp. What's exciting about that is when you think of our kids that we serve, well over 80% of our kids live in some type of underserved area, facing adversity, facing a challenge, whatever that may be, single parent home, poverty, academic struggles, whatever it may be, the greater majority of our kids are facing some adversity. A lot of our kids who are in our program, being school-based or community-based programs, are able to go to our camp in the summer, spend 5, 7, 10 days, and just be kids there. And that's huge. A lot of our kids are facing some real adult situations where they're having to step into roles that they shouldn't have to at their younger ages. So for them to be able to go here, have a focus on group mentoring, social skills, leadership skills, development, growth, it's amazing. I've been to our camp multiple times, and I always say it's hard. I love going, but there is no time for cell phones. So no Facebook, no Instagram, no Twitter, none of that stuff. Doesn't work at camp. Always hard to adjust to. And then you get kind of just lost in the magic of camp. And that's what I typically call it, just the magic of camp. It's an amazing place. 730 acres of just outdoor wonderfulness. What's also cool about our camp is it is curriculum accredited. So kind of not in the summertime, but in all the other time of the year, we have about 20 schools who use our camp for science education and STEM credit. So it's a busy place, and a lot of folks don't even know we have it. So I'm glad I got to share that with you guys today. I'll go to Project Mentor because Jamie mentioned that, and so thrilled that she did. Project Mentor falls underneath our school-based mentoring model. So as you know, our mentoring model is one-to-one. That's our focus, is that one-to-one relationship and development. But Project Mentor is our largest school-based mentoring program. We collaborate with Columbus City Schools, and they are the largest school district in our wonderful city. So we work with them, and what you do is you're in the school setting mentoring 1 hour, 1 day, every week throughout the school year. And so if you hear about that community-based model, you're pretty busy, you've got some different things kind of pulling on your time, but you still want to find a way to be involved. I tell a lot of my potential mentors who are looking at our programs that Project Mentor is a really good place to start. If you don't have your own children, you've not worked with youth who might be facing some challenges, you're not really sure how to connect, we're going to provide you with a ton of resources and support through this program to make it really easy. Quite honestly, all you have to do is show up, and we got the rest covered. We really do. That model was great. When you're in the school setting, we have activities every single week that are focused on social and emotional development. So, most of our programs start at the 6th grade level now. When we launched back in 2007, we were matching new volunteers in the 8th grade. We pushed back a few years to give our mentors more time at that middle school level to build a relationship with their mentee before they have to look at that high school transition, because our kids can be pretty transient, so they can kind of move around. So we want you to have more time to be able to build a relationship. That way, if you're thinking maybe community-based might be your next step, you've got more of a relationship under your belt to make a kind of more informed decision. But in our Project Mentor program, every week you're there for that 1 hour, 1 day. We're going to have activities for you. They're fun, they're hands-on, and they're engaging because they have to be. Because these kids 1 day a week give up their lunch hour to meet with you. All right, so we got to make sure that we're not making it too much where they're like, oh my gosh, another class, I don't want to do that. But we are in the school setting. Some of our kids struggle, and so we want to make sure that we are doing the school system justice by helping to support what they're doing for their kids and help them move that much closer to academic success. So our activities are incredibly intentional. We kind of weave in science, reading, math, those kind of things into those activities. We call it the hide the broccoli approach. The kids have no idea they're learning, but they are learning for sure. I'll give you an example. We have a game called the Spaghetti Marshmallow Tower, which is just super cool. It's all about building, so it's got science in there, math, because you've got to build a structure or a bridge out of raw spaghetti and marshmallows. Now, you're like, oh, that's easy. Not so much. It's not so much. You got to figure out what's going to make your structure supported because you're going to try to put some rocks on top of it and it needs to support that structure. But what's great about that is you get to see how competitive the kids are, but more importantly, how competitive those mentors get. They're all about wanting to win. They're like, we're going to win this. And you're thinking, wow, the mentors are really into this game. So it's a really fun space. You've got a program coordinator there every week from the agency there to support you in that. So if you're not sure how to talk to a 6th grader, don't worry. We've got tons of training to help you do that. It is a really good place to start if you have an interest for sure. I'll go to our community-based mentoring umbrella last. And so we have a couple different programs under that a lot of folks don't know. I'll start with our Connecting the Dots program. We work with the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. They provide funding for us to launch a pilot program where we are working with foster care youth. Now this is a different population of youth for us. We serve kids about ages 5 to 16 or how we enroll the kids in our program. And as many of them have mentioned, we will follow those kids through 18, 19. until they essentially age out of our program, okay? But this population, foster care, being more like 15 to upwards of 20, and if you know anything about foster care, these kids could have been through a number of things. It can be a pretty hard road for kids who are in the foster care system. I'm just dealing with some different adversities. And so we have launched our pilot program with ODJFS to be able to provide mentoring to these kids. So we work with the WIA agencies, the workforce investment agencies, children's services, and then Big Brothers Big Sisters to provide essentially wraparound support for these kids. There's just some statistics I have to share with you. Foster care youth, 81% of young boys in foster care are arrested by age 24. 81%. 48% of females become pregnant by age 19. It is just astounding to me, some of the statistics, and you kind of maybe question why we're in that space. That's why. We're trying to find opportunities to be a necessary intervention to kids in this space. Additionally, we also have a program called Amachi, and it's known as Amachi, Ohio. This is a statewide program where we are mentoring youth who have an incarcerated parent. Now, this is one of the ones when I came to the agency, I was thinking, how many kids are truly impacted by that? Because you don't hear about that kind of in our daily community. You see it on the news, but you're thinking, how many kids are really impacted? In the state of Ohio, it is estimated that 56,000 kids have an incarcerated parent. Now, if you know anything about data in that regard, that is estimated, and that number could be higher because you don't have families really offering out that level of information. It has some stigma, some negative stigma around that. So it's not always tracked easily. What I can tell you for us, in this Amachi, Ohio program, we launched this several years ago, but just for us last year as a state, so being as the state of Ohio, Big Brothers Big Sisters agencies, we made just over 500 matches of kids who qualify for that program who have an incarcerated parent. That became way more real for me to understand there is a need for mentors in that space, and just the outcomes and the impact that we can create here for these kids to have consistency, to see another positive support is really important. Really, really important. What I did mention here is the Mentoring Center of Central Ohio. We are just so fortunate to have the Mentoring Center in our back pocket, essentially. The Mentoring Center is an organization who provides mentoring support to over 40 mentoring organizations, not just Big Brothers Big Sisters. We are very fortunate to have them provide all of our new mentor training, and then also all of our ongoing training for our mentors. So when you see these folks in the room who've had positive experiences, they've been through our training program. They have access to other training resources through the Mentoring Center. They're just an incredible standard for being able to help companies and organizations start a mentoring program, build one, support it, strengthen it, all with the idea of impacting the kids positively. So we are incredibly fortunate to have them in our back pocket for sure. What I didn't mention is just kind of how the programs work. So I'll kind of give you a quick breakdown. The school-based program, or Project Mentor being our largest here kind of locally, again is 1 hour, 1 day a week, and it's throughout the entire school year. So you're looking at starting about October through about mid-May, and then you're kind of off for the summer. Our traditional community-based program, as Jeff mentioned, is twice a month is what we're looking for, is our kind of minimum requirement, spending about 2 to 3 hours each time together. And that is out doing whatever the two of you enjoy. So you being the big, them being the little, we encourage academic rich activities because we obviously want to be, helping our kids move forward in that space. But if that is going to the park and shooting some hoops, going to the library to read some books or work on some homework, catching a movie, any of the things that you enjoy doing, we definitely encourage our mentors to expose our littles to opportunities. Going to a museum is a good one to incorporate fun and learning. At the same time, being cognizant of free to low cost activities, because the greatest gift you're giving them is your time and your consistency. And we never want that to be overshadowed by just activities, because anyone can do those. But you giving your time, you can't get that back. And it's one of the greatest things that they remember in their lives as they go forward, is the time you gave sowing into them for, a positive results for sure. I threw this in here because I think it's really important, which was great because you guys were talking about your values and principles. And when you were saying those, I was thinking about, what do we want for our kids? Many of you talked about compassion and empathy, a focus on education. understanding oneself. Those are things we want for our kids. It's what we work with the Mentoring Center on. How do we coach our mentors to be able to understand some of those core things that our kids need to develop or strengthen? And how can our mentors help in that space? So it was just great to have that connection to what you guys already hold true, to what we're looking for in our kids. But then there's also those kind of personal, intangible things for you as well. Now I tell folks, I do volunteer recruitment. That's what I do. It's the space I live in. I always need mentors. I'm in that space. And I never want to tell folks to be a mentor because of all the great, kind of benefits to you that may look good on your resume. But you can't not mention some of the really good ones on there to make you even that much more valuable, or just that much more kind of benefited by being a mentor in the program. It's not just our program, but a number of mentoring programs. Anytime you get outside of yourself and serve and give yourself away, I truly believe there's positive results in you doing that. So just a number of things. Empathy was up there, and you guys mentioned that. Diversity, that is a big one for me, being a mentor for the last 7 years. I didn't grow up in the environment that our kids are growing up in today, but I did live in a single-parent home. I had a mom who worked multiple jobs, who wasn't home a lot. And so we were very fortunate where education was a priority in our home, so that was always our focus, and we did have a very strong family unit. I have an older sister and a younger brother, so my mom was just a very positive person. A lot of kids in our homes have parents who are gone and can't provide that one-on-one time. I feel very fortunate that when my mom had it, we got it. And so for me, a lot of things our kids face, I saw that in my everyday world, and I was a part of that. When I came home, I was very much protected from it. And so I can relate in a number of ways, but in some ways I can't. And so for me, I know diversity and humility were two of the really big things that I just kind of had to open up my space to. But then communication skills and negotiation are the ones I never realized I was going to truly perfect in this program until you start working with youth. And I tell you, they will call you on your stuff when they think you're wrong. And they teach you a lot, and you teach them some things. But I truly feel what I've gotten from this program is far greater than what I feel like I've given to the kids in the program. I feel like I've gotten so much more. I feel like with mentoring, it's like anything. You get better with it the longer you do it. So with that, I have to just say, I always ask for folks time, talent, and treasure. I know not everyone can give their time. You can have a number of things going on, and I certainly respect that. We've got a lot of folks who donate to us through in-kind donations, training opportunities, things like that. We're always appreciative, but also kind of looking at treasure as well. Donations to help us support our program so we can continue to have the reach that we have in this community and give back. So with that, I'm going to be done. I did leave you guys a brochure over on the table that just outlines our programs again in case you want to have that. It also talks about all the ways you can get involved. And then I left my business card there as well, so feel free to take those with you, hand those out. I love when folks call and say, hey, I was given your card by a friend of a friend of a friend. Mm-hmm. I love that start of a conversation. So please feel free to take that for yourself, share it with your friends. The need is great. The front of our brochure said kids are waiting, maybe not so patiently. Because the need is great for sure. And we always need mentors. Male mentors are always needed. So definitely, if you know folks who are interested, put them in touch. But with that, I will stop chatting and open the floor up to any questions that you guys may have of me.